So what is it then? It's Sugelanren? Sugelanren. Yeah, I have no problem with the tone. Have you seen the tone of this? We're doing this the right way. Are you kidding me? um. Yeah, and thanks for saying, oh, I might get this way. Don't take offense. I do the same thing. I usually don't mention any sort of qualifiers. So yeah, we're all fine there. Now, first of all, you were saying that you don't think that there would have even been a trial if not for the machinations of the activists here, who'd you say? I was thinking Crump and them, but you said somebody else famous, Al Sharpton. And fine, that's the role of the activists. There should have been a trial. Now, there should be a trial. I mean, I'm all for self-defense law. That doesn't mean there should be no trial. This is like reminds me of this mistake, usually U.S. Americans make, like that guy's so guilty he doesn't even deserve a trial. Like they try to pull in Gitmo. The thing is, the trial is to find out if how guilty the person is. So it just doesn't work that way. There's no person too innocent. It's for the accused, right? And I personally think, of course, it should have to go to a judge. If one man kills another man, it should absolutely have to go to a judge. It shouldn't be up to a prosecutor to bring it to a judge. It should go to a judge. It shouldn't be up to a cop to take. I mean, somebody died. Somebody should review it. It could be obvious, and it'll just be quick to review. Maybe you can't avoid a trial. But if you can't avoid a trial and you're innocent, well, yeah, it's not like we only have trials for guilty people and rigged to make guilty people or something. An innocent person, when there's some ambiguity to the situation. I mean, look, most murders, there isn't a witness of the direct murder. How do they get convicted? People are acting like, well, somebody's got to see him, or you just don't know. You could say it was self-defense. No, that's just not how our system works, because, maybe in some ideal platonic world it should work that way. But in our world, it wouldn't work that way. People already find a private place, in a private way, a secret way to kill somebody. And if you could figure out they did it and illustrate that, you don't have to be there on the scene when it happened. Would have stopped it if that was the case. Okay. So it should have gone to a trial, especially when a grown adult kills a minor. I think there should be some scrutiny on that. And besides, you're mistaken when you say, oh, well, if there was enough. Serino, the detective on this case, did suggest charging Zimmerman. I forget if it was murder too or just manslaughter, but he did want him arrested, charged, tried. He did think there was enough evidence. It's the prosecutor is no longer the prosecutor, Sanford, that decided not to do anything about it. That people motivated, or that people were suspicious that there was a racial thing, or just whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? What all the various tens of thousands of people in Sanford and around the country that wanted some scrutiny on this situation, they wanted looked into more, and that was the right thing to want. They all had their different motivation. It doesn't mean none of them were motivated by bitterness or racism or race baiting. Well, it shouldn't have been given to them to use as fodder like that. It obviously should have been scrutinized by a court, I would say. I don't think self-defense law or the principle of self-defense arguments were meant to give the discretion to the police or a prosecutor. It's supposed to be if you actually acted in self-defense. It's not giving somebody discretion over their interpretation of self-defense. The prosecutor is supposed to be objective in that case. I don't think they were. The activists were supposed to be objective. They were asking for a trial. I don't think that's too much to ask for in a society of laws. Especially in this case. I mean, it's unfortunate that you killed somebody, so it's also unfortunate that you might have to be subject to proper scrutiny, right? Not just any link in a chain that doesn't want to go forward with it. The parents can't say, nope, sorry. Hey, the detective wanted to do it, but no, the prosecutor said no. Absolutely not. Furthermore, I think when there's murder, somebody should get a physical examination. That should have to happen as part of evidence collection. And if I had to kill somebody in self-defense, I would not at all mind having to answer for that by going through the scrutiny. And they look into my background, and I claim he's a stranger, invaded my house. Look in. Did I know him? Was he really my this or that? And I had a beef with him. Find those things out. And put the story to the test, of course. So their motivation for wanting that has nothing to do with whether George did self-defense. And all that happened as a result of it is he has to go to the scrutiny of a court, which is where you find out if by our system they're to be judged guilty or not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Your coaching answer, I think, doesn't cut the mustard. I mean, no. You're saying she would be coached to only say things that would show up on the recordings, but the recordings happened way after, seconds and obviously more than a few statements worth of time. There is not going to be any other recording, right? Because this is, according to her, this is when the confrontation started, and we could pretty much assume that Trayvon didn't, as you guys suppose, attack George Zimmerman while still talking on the phone with her. One way or another, the call ended before any of the other 911 calls came. And if she could say, he said, get off, she could say, he said, you're not going nowhere, black boy, or she could have said anything. She could have attributed anything to George Zimmerman. So no, I don't think that makes any sense at all. And if you want to say, well, one thing we learned from her testimony is that Trayvon had the racial issue. Well, first of all, you can't just believe that and not believe everything else. And we're not really trying to find out who's racist here. The question is, was it in self-defense, and so on. All right. George Zimmerman was pursuing him at least up to the time that he came to the T. And supposedly he stopped. But the action all takes place south of the T, where he said he never went. Okay? So I see a problem there. He was following up right till then, and then it's like, no, and then I decided not to follow, and it became self-defense. That doesn't sound particularly credible to me. Right? So, you can't take one part of her statement and not another. And if you're gonna, and that's why I'm saying about the cracker comment, is that it would be a super clever way to create credibility in the important part of her testimony, which is what happened at the end of the call, that he knew he was being followed. I haven't made a big deal that George Zimmerman said these fucking punks always get away. I could, but basically in a situation like that, yeah, that's how he was thinking. He says something about his thinking. Creepy ass cracker also says something about his thinking. He felt stalked and followed for some reason. He also called him a nigger. Crazy nigger's still behind me, she said, something like that. So I think it's pretty much within the realm of the slang that the kids were using. On the other hand, he could have been a racist. That doesn't mean he attacked George Zimmerman. Right? So we have other things to look at. And the main issue here is how the confrontation started. And according to Dee Dee, Zimmerman was following Trayvon. Trayvon got away, following that. Finally approached him, and Trayvon had stopped running. I said, why are you following me? And I asked you about if you even thought he was on the phone with her, because I've seen that doubt a lot. I read this the conservative treehouse that covers this. And there have been people doubting it all the time, thought the records were forged. Now maybe they have to accept that, but I'm sure some won't. There's other ways to deny it, though. Some people were saying, oh, maybe he was on the phone with someone else, or This girl was really just a middleman for Trayvon, liked one of her friends, and that was who was on the phone. Things like that. So I just believe in establishing a baseline. With something like this, I don't like to argue, oh, we disagree with this, and get down and see where it stops. That's what you do in logical analytics, where nobody knows where it stops. Court case type situation, you could do something different. Let's see where we. Actually, you can do this in analytic discussion too, but where do we even agree? So I'd like to know, okay, you agree she was the one actually talking to Trayvon that day, right? So, and that's important in the sense that her overall framework of what was happening, it seems she was on the phone with him from when he left to the store to when George Zimmerman confronted him. The letter, see, you kept saying like her story's based on the letter. I would say it's supposed to be the other way around. She has a story and memory and a recollection, and filtered through her own way of seeing things, no doubt. And the letter was a representation of that. If she didn't write it herself, yeah, she had someone help her write it. That's not why you would say the prosecution is basing their case on that letter. That's not true. They're basing it on her testimony initially to Bernie Delorianda, or whatever his name is, and ultimately her testimony in court. The letter was written by somebody else. Are you saying somebody else made that letter up out of whole cloth, and then she is able to remember it all through all of these interrogations with inconsistencies that are pretty minor, right? I mean, because the major thing there is that Trayvon did not sucker punch what's in face. And I didn't really. I wanted to have to watch it again. Maybe I didn't quite get what you were asking. You don't know where the sucker punch thing comes from. It's from. I could try to find a link. I did a little bit, but it's from what George Zimmerman told Sereno, and then acted out a little bit differently, but repeated sucker punch wise in the walkthrough. I could be mistaken. I saw the walkthrough part recently where he said it. I'm pretty sure there, and I think in Sereno's, in his deposition or whatever it would be to Sereno, the night or night after, day after, whenever that was. So I never said this was supposed to be racial. I started off saying it's not. This has to do with, first of all, I always thought it was more of a Barney Fife syndrome thing. And that the issue of race obviously comes in. One wonders why there was no prosecution. That's one way. That's the original way it came in. Why no prosecution? A minor is killed, and you don't even want to have hearings on it. You don't want to have any test of what the situation was. I mean, it's not like he was found in somebody's house with a gun. You're just going to take the killer's word for it? That's what self-defense law means? I don't think so. And then also, there's the profiling. But I think it's pretty clear that, George Zimmerman wouldn't have profiled any black man. It's not like he saw a wealthy black man walking through his neighborhood. He'd be the kind of racist that said, "Ooh, that's probably a gang member here to sell cocaine." It's just a teenager, and I always imagine any young teenager, including a white one, could have looked like a thug to George Zimmerman in those circumstances. In fact, I thought of myself at that age. I would have probably been wearing a hoodie. So yeah, they're not relying on the letter, and I think it really shouldn't be racial. It's not a racial thing. I don't see how it's a racial thing. I mean, if it was a white kid and a black Hispanic dude, you think I'd be going, "Oh yeah, good riddance." No. The whole thing about the phone call not being recorded is like, there are so many witnesses to this. It's remarkable. And George himself is a witness to he did the killing. So you don't need to record her conversation to believe it. I mean, there's other things that lend credibility. Like, does it look like she said something that couldn't have happened? No. There's nothing like that. So you can just choose to disbelieve it, and some people think, well, but she's stupid, and that's their star witness. Oh man, the star witness isn't bright. Well, star witness isn't chosen because of their ability to spin a tale. And somebody who isn't likely to be that bright spinning a tale can actually be a pretty credible witness on the things they are able to reflect. So, yeah, so to me it looks like, he says he never went down south of the T, or is it south? I forget. You're always looking at it. Anyway, we never went below the T in the way the orientation of the map we always see. Never went below the T. Right? But that's where the body is. Way down there. He says he went straight down. He didn't say there was a struggle in the back, then he went down. It was sucker punched. Why? I think it's pretty clear he's trying to avoid that he was going down there looking for the kid. And then he did say, what are you doing here? And then they obviously had a tussle. Somebody grabbed somebody, started some way. How did he get those bruises? Well, they were rolling around on the ground. Fell down on the ground, rolling around. That's how. Fighting each other. He punched him in the nose and then put his hand over his mouth, and you saw the blood. There's blood on the back of his hand, and he's grabbing him, and he gets no DNA on him. Trayvon gets none of George's blood on him. Not in his fingernails, nothing. Don't think so. They had a pushy, grabby match. And when they fell down and What's-Him-Face got hurt, he went all killer instinct. So trials are for the accused, and George stands accused.